Welcome back to Operation Evil. This is episode 47, West Memphis Boogeyman, Part 2. I'm your host, Nyoka.
I'm Rachel.
We have a special announcement to make.
It's so hard to be serious.
Just go with it.
The whole table is shaking.
Just, I've got nothing. Look, it's Friday the 13th. It's been quite the week. Rachel's over here having a breakdown, and we did have our book contest, and congratulations to Gina who won it.
Congratulations, Gina.
Warning, this episode contains disturbing content, and as always, listener discretion is advised. We are picking up where we left off last week with part 1. We're going to jump right on in. Rachel, we left off with Vicky, right?
It was, I don't really remember, but I just know that we ended with the sentencing, like the verdict, the sentencing, a little bit about the trial, just a little bit. So we'll go more in depth. There may be things that is repeated.
Yeah, that's just going to be how it is.
Yeah. But I got to tell you, earlier, there was this piece of hair, and I said, "Oh, it must be Damien Eccles."
It must be.
We're just trying to make a point of how stupid the evidence in the trial. Yeah. You'll see.
Only a murderer could have their hair on your cup or whatever.
From 1,000, 100, and thousands of miles away, and their hair is brown.
Yeah, absolutely.
Way over exaggerated.
I'm excited for part 2 because
it's just so
there's a lot going on here.
It's just so hard to be serious today. I'm sorry.
Once you start telling the story, you'll get sad or mad.
Probably a little bit of both. Today was a tough day. We
lost our best boss.
Yeah. I mean, he's okay.
Yeah, he didn't die.
He just went to a different location to work.
Which is sad.
Such a great guy.
Yep. Anyway, now that we're wiping tears away.
Okay, so for part 2, like I said, we're going to get more in depth into the evidence and the trial.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
All right, so we are going to start with the opening statements for Jesse Miskelly's trial. Now, his trial was on January 26th, 1994. I'm sorry, that was when the opening statements began. So he was arrested like in June in 93. And then the trial is much later, January following year. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So, and then like his trial was held about like 110 miles away from the location. It was in this little town called Corning, Arkansas. And the idea was with the trial was that they were trying to, because with all the media attention, they were trying to give the boys a fair trial. But I think we mentioned in the last episode that Jesse's confession was leaked into the newspaper, like one of those big main newspapers that's around. I think it's called the Commercial Appeal. So it was leaked into, remember we were talking about the state police, the scanners and things?
None of them had a fair trial, huh?
They really didn't.
Because didn't they try Damien and Jason together?
Yes.
And they should have been separated.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, the media was already, I don't know how obviously they didn't pick a jury to be fair.
Right.
And again, the thing about rumor and fact is still an issue here. So like I said, his trial was held first, and the reason why it was held first was because of the confession.
Now remember, Jesse's the one that with the lower IQ, just to recap, he was led to this confession.
A false confession.
Yes. He was led to a false confession.
The prosecutors, and also he was like 16 at the time, I believe.
16 or 17?
Let me see.
I think 17.
I think you're right. Let me check my findings here. I have it wrote down so we can refer back to it.
Now remember, Jesse thought in the very beginning he was just helping the police because they made it sound like, hey, help us out with this and then you'll get the $35,000 reward and then your dad could buy a new truck or whatever the whole thing was. And then they're like, this is a good opportunity to lead them into this confession.
It's like, and he respected authority.
Yeah, and remember, too, that they told him the polygraph was a mind reader. So he's thinking, well, they know if I'm lying, obviously.
He really outsmarted them. Yeah, because he said, I know I'm lying. They tell me this machine can read my mind, so then they know I'm lying.
Right. I just want to go home.
I mean, how smart is that to figure that out?
They're nice to me when I say what they want me to say.
And the whole circle thing, you want to be inside this circle with us. Yes, Jesse was actually 18 when he was convicted.
Oh, okay.
So he was 17 when he was arrested.
Okay.
Jason was convicted at 16, and then Damien was convicted at 19. So Jason was the youngest.
Yeah, and the smallest.
Well, Jesse was
smaller?
Well, Jesse, I guess in height, he was smaller, but Jason was like really thin.
Yeah.
But taller.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the prosecutors, Brent Davis and John Fogelman, they claimed, of course, that Jesse's confession was not coerced and that he was an accomplice.
There we go.
To the murders of Christopher, Michael, and Stevie. Dan Stidham, Jesse's lawyer. Now, I know, do you want to touch on Dan? Because Nayoka absolutely loved Jesse's lawyer.
Yeah. He's fantastic because, one, he's not charging anything. He's doing this out of the goodness of his heart. He went into the case originally thinking that he was going to try to talk Jesse into a plea, and he thought maybe Jesse was actually guilty. And then he got to know Jesse and meet him and everything and realize what was going on. But he has stuck by Jesse's side this entire time and continues to do so. For as long as he needs to. He's really been there for the family and for him. He's reached out for more help. He's, I don't know. I think Jesse got really lucky with this guy.
Yes, he went above and beyond.
He really did, and he didn't have to.
He said that, when he went to go meet with Jesse, that at that point, Jesse was telling him the same thing he told the police. And then he got to, really listening to what he was saying and kind of said to him, Jesse, you need to level with me here. Did you do it? Did you not? What's going on here? Because he thought he had to get Jesse to understand the whole process.
Yeah.
He had to get him to understand what a lawyer was, that he wasn't a detective, that he was on his side. And there's one thing that I read where it said that Jesse was like, what's satin? And it took Dan a minute to realize that he was asking what Satan was. Because, he knew as Satan as the devil. And there was a pamphlet or something that somebody had brought into the jail to give him. So he's talking to his lawyer about it. And he's like, yeah, what's Satan?
What does that tell you right there? Right. That he wasn't part of some cult or devil worshiping.
Yeah.
Murder. He didn't even know what it was.
And, I love it too because his father really supported him the whole time too. He was like, I don't think he did it. And I think they wrote and talked as much as they could on the phone.
Yep.
And one of the comments that I absolutely loved that was in the documentary was Jesse's father said, he's just slow-minded. That's what the problem is. And, ain't all of us a little bit slow-minded sometimes? And it's true.
It's very true. And another thing, just to kind of put the vibe out there, and I definitely recommend watching the documentary Paradise Lost on HBO, because this Paradise Lost, they went into this thinking that they were just documenting these 3 teenagers that killed these 3 little boys and that they were guilty and whatever. And it turned into this whole other animal. And they've been there the whole time.
Yes, like some of the lawyers have kind of come and gone with Jason and Damien.
Yeah.
But you'll kind of understand why.
Yeah. I just want to put that vibe out there that everybody went into this thinking everyone's guilty and
Yeah, like it was definitely not what they thought it was.
yes.
And what's great too about Dan was like he would go to Jesse's family, like you were saying, and check on them. But he would tell them too, like, don't talk to the media. They can use things against us. Even after Jesse has been in prison for like, I don't know, 5-10 years, he still is doing what he can for Jesse and the family.
Dan is the man.
Definitely. Look, I moved it. I lost my place.
Yeah, I think you went down like 10 pages.
So Dan's thing too was that, like I said, this was a false confession and that Jesse is innocent. That's more or less how he tried to base his case. He brought in witnesses that said that Jesse was out of town. I think it was like the next town over at a wrestling match. There was a log to show that Jesse signed in. There was pictures of him with people. Something about Jesse hurt his hand or his foot or his ankle or something. It would be like specific things. Like, yeah, that was that night that Jesse blah, blah, blah. Or, just very specific things that people remembered. But yet the police couldn't remember things.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse's stepmother also was there to support him, and her name was Shelby. So she's no longer married to Jesse Sr., but she said she had Jesse from the age of 4 and that he was like the type of child, he was very shy. Even as he got older, they described him as being very timid. She said she would come home from school, or he would come home from school, and if she wasn't around, then he would just lose it. I don't know really like if something happened to him early in his life or if that's just the way he was. Like we're just trying to paint the picture that he is not the person that the police painted him to be. Like he's just this sweet, quiet person who just was like, just wanted to be cared for and loved and just wanted the security.
I didn't realize that they got divorced.
Well, if you notice in that one documentary,
she wasn't there. Yeah.
There's a different woman. It's his girlfriend.
I didn't even put it together.
Yeah. Because remember the one girl that's like his girlfriend is like, well, if he did it, I'm not giving him a dime.
Oh, I remember that. Mm-hmm. She didn't even give him the benefit of doubt from the get-go, I feel like.
I don't think so
Or maybe
either.
she just wanted to cover her bases for the camera.
She definitely had doubt. Because she was like, I don't think he did it either, but then you have his dad like, no, I'll give him money. He's my son.
Yeah. His dad never questioned.
Never had any doubt.
Never questioned it.
And Jesse had, he didn't go to school. He did like roofing jobs and then like worked on autos and things
Babysat for Vicky.
Yes. Vicky. And I think he babysat for other people in the little trailer park area too. It just goes to show, just because you don't finish school, that doesn't mean that you're dumb.
Yeah. There's
other areas that you shine, that you're smart in. So that was just one of the things that I think they used against him too.
Yeah, they did. They just took advantage of the kid.
They sure did. So, when Jesse was taken to the police station by Detective Mike Allen, remember he picked him up from Vicky's house. Jesse was there spending the night because Vicky was scared.
Yes, I do remember that.
So they said that at that point that Jesse wasn't a suspect. It was said that he was just coming in because he was a contact to get to Damien and Jason.
Yeah.
But soon that's when the interrogation started. And, to please them, Jesse repeated and agreed with Ridge and with Gitchell and with Allen, all 3 detectives at 3 different times. Sometimes it was 1-on-1. Sometimes it was like all 3 of them on him. Like he just wanted to go home.
Yeah.
And, this was the point that Jesse's lawyer, Dan, was trying to make at the trial, that at any point did it occur to Gitchell that something wasn't right. And, Jesse even said, he was like, I was just irritated. He was getting on my nerves. I just wanted I love how he says police. He'd say police.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to get the police off my back. And at the trial, Dan asked one of the detectives, I think it was Ridge, I believe. He was like, did you ever consider that Jesse has or had a mental handicap? And he said no. The detective answered no. Actually, it was Gitchell, I believe, because I remember Gitchell saying Jesse simply got confused. But how can you get confused with it was morning, then it was afternoon, and then you're being led, like they take a break, and then suddenly when they come back from break, the time of the crime wasn't in the morning because, one, the kids were in school. Then it couldn't been at noon because the kids were still in school. Jesse doesn't go to school. And then it was at night. He was led into saying what they wanted him to say. During the interrogation, when Jesse pointed to one of the picture of the boys, because of course they show him a picture of, I think it was Stevie Branch, but they show him a picture of one of the kids, and of course it shocks Jesse. I'm sure he's never seen anything like that.
No.
It made him very upset. He didn't understand what's going on. He didn't understand maybe what he was seeing. And he refers to the child with the wrong name, which, I mean, I suppose that would be easily done to say the wrong name. But it just continued that the information that he was relaying to the detectives was not right. It didn't add up. And it's just, I can't figure out why the detectives didn't think it was an obvious problem. Like, and that's what Dan's point was too. Like I said, like the timeline, the details with the rope, like how Jesse said that rope was used to tie the boys and not shoestrings from, their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And there was not 1 ounce, nothing, no physical evidence to put Jesse anywhere near the scene of the crime.
I also heard when they were interrogating him, because another person had brought this up, and it was a good point, when they were talking about, I guess, was it the Briars boy that was what they thought castrated at the time?
Yeah, Christopher.
They were asking Jesse, do you know what a penis is? Why would you ask him if he knows what that is if you don't think he had a mental handicap?
That is
like
such a good
claim.
Point. That is a very good point.
I thought so too. Why would you ask that? Would you just ask that to anyone you were interrogating?
Right.
No, I don't think you would.
That's very infuriating.
Mm-hmm.
They called on, there was an expert on police interrogation techniques that they called on. His name is Warren Holmes. And he stated that a person who could be like, that this could happen to, like a false confession, it would be a person with a low IQ, a person that is highly suggestible, a person that quickly likes to solve a situation or an issue when there's like a stress factor involved. And, their thinking is, I can straighten this out later. I'll just fix it later. Right now, let's just kind of like, you're appeasing the person.
Right. That sounds just like Jesse.
Yes, all this criteria is for a false confession, and it exactly fits him. He fits all those factors. And Warren also said that it was an issue to him about how the conversation started. Like right off the bat, like I think it was like a direct line to the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't like how it started. And we already said too, but like he did not like how there was like the mistake of the timeline, and then how he pointed out too the fact that Jesse said rope instead of shoestrings or laces.
Yeah, I remember in one of those documentaries, they asked Gitchell, is it Gitchell? Gitchell, about these wrong answers that Jesse was giving during the confession. And,
yes,
and he explained it as, he just got confused.
Yes, what the hell do you mean?
Right. He just got confused on a murder confession?
Yeah, he simply was confused. Now, I can't remember because they had another person that they had, I don't know if it was in the documentary or at the trial, but Dr. Richard Offshee, Now, he's an expert on false confessions. He said that Jesse was definitely under pressure and he was manipulated. I'm thinking it was him because it was either him or Dr. Warren. What was Dr. Warren's last name? Holmes. Dr. Warren Holmes. So between the two of them, though, they asked prosecutor Brent Davis, his smugness, like, I wanted to smack the crap out of that dude.
Yeah. He was
Do you
very
know what
smug.
I'm talking about? Like, he's like, so what is your rate of pay? Like, what do you get paid an hour? He asked about Dr. Offshe's rates. And he was like, so you don't get paid unless you're called as a witness, right? And like, and you, basically like saying like you testify in their favor.
Yeah, he's trying to discredit him.
Uh-huh. And so the doctor, I loved it because the doctor came back and was like, you're wrong. And like he corrected him with the rates and he like, because the Brent Davis also said, so you don't know or you can't give an opinion that any of those comments were coerced, can you? The doctor replied, no, because the recording was incomplete.
Yeah, it was.
Like, what was it? Like 45 minutes of 2 hours or something like that. Like, they didn't even begin.
Of like 12 hours.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Way off. Was it only 45 minutes or was it 2 hours then of total recording?
No, I think it was 45 minutes of that.
Gosh.
Like there wasn't a whole lot there.
And with note taking too.
Yeah.
There were, and like as I already said too, there was numerous witnesses that provided alibis for Jesse.
That didn't matter.
Mm-mm. And then, like in the closing arguments, Jesse's lawyer noted all the incomplete notes and the incomplete information that was, like, what about this? And then the police would just forget, or like we were just discussing about the confession not being fully taped. And also, too, I want to point out that Jesse's lawyer, Dan, was looking back through the jurors' notes, and he said, like, the thing about the alibi, they didn't even pay any attention to it. They were so focused on all this other junk that they didn't take into consideration his alibi at all. It was just forgotten about. Of
course. Well, it didn't fit the narrative.
Right. And, the prosecution said that, it's all smoke and mirrors, and they mentioned how Jesse would not look up, which he says himself, I didn't look up because they told me not to. Mm-hmm. He did what he was told to do. And then one of the comments, too, I think from the prosecution was they told the jurors, I think it was Brent Davis, he said, to use your common sense when coming, to make the decision. Okay, so we're going to talk about Damien and Jason's trial here in a minute, but I kind of wanted to go back a little bit because I kind of wanted to talk about the lawyers, like how they were assigned.
Okay.
So in 1993, on June 7th, a state judge appointed a pair of lawyers to represent each of the three defendants. Val Price and Scott Davidson, they were going to represent Damien. Paul Ford and George Wadley represented Jason. And then Dan Stidham was appointed to Jesse. Now, I think it's Jason's lawyer, Paul Ford. Do you remember in the closing statements, which I'm going to just go right into their trial now, but do you remember in the closing statements when he makes a comment about how guilt by association is a terrible thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did that strike you as like odd that he said that, or did it strike you at all like bad or whatever?
Yeah, it was a weird thing to say.
It kind of always did me too.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of get answers for that. So on February 28th, 1994, Jason and Damien's trial, it was held in a bigger town in Jonesboro.
And together,
yes. Jesse was asked to testify against Damien and Jason, and then in return, he would get a shorter sentence. Now, they knew that they had to do this because if Jesse didn't testify, then they wouldn't be able to use the confession, and then they wouldn't really have much evidence to use against Jason or Damien. I mean, really, like, in my opinion, Damien and Jason's case were built on hearsay, a knife, and fibers. That's it.
Oh, it was all circumstantial.
Yes.
All
Which
of it.
even the lawyers admit, the prosecution, they admit it was a circumstantial case.
I mean, if honestly, it feels like Salem witch trials all over again.
And that's exactly what other people said too.
Yeah.
Dr. Dale Griffiths testified for prosecution about the occult. This is the most ridiculous testimony. Like, I don't even want to talk about it. It's like ridiculous. So he explains all this imagery and cult activities. He said that people that are in the occult usually use black nail polish, black clothing. They dye their hair black, and usually they have tattoos.
This was the occult expert, right?
Yes, that prosecution brought in. The date, and he also said too that there's a holiday or a couple holidays that are close to the date of the murder, which was May 5th. Now, I didn't go into look into these holidays because they're probably just made up. It's probably actually something of a Wiccan holiday.
Yeah.
That should not
Maybe.
even be misconstrued, you know?
Yeah.
And also, the full moon was a factor.
Of course.
And he explained that the blood from youth equals power because their blood is pure. Makes sense.
It's legit. Do you have more on this dude? Because from what I know, he has a degree, right? He's like a doctor. He's like the occult expert, right?
I think I know what you're going to say.
His degree, his doctorate or whatever, consisted of an online certificate. Like, he never took classes, not one class.
It's just
that makes him
research.
it wasn't even like a legit thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they allowed this to be
used as
testimony.
Yeah. And what I think is great is that Paul Ford's lawyer, or Jason's lawyer, Paul Ford, he challenged that. He asked him, he brought that up to him. Like, he questioned him.
Were going to go, I ruined it. I'm sorry.
No, you didn't ruin it. You didn't ruin it at all. It was a perfect opportunity to bring it up. But, Judge Burnett threw it out. He was like, well, I don't see why, how someone gets their education matters. Well, I mean, it doesn't, but the guy was full of shit.
I mean, there wasn't even a class. He didn't take one class for this expert degree.
Like, where are him and Jerry Driver now? Like, Jerry Driver, remember, was the juvenile detention person that made this list.
Yeah.
And was talking about all these cults going on and the devil worshipping.
The things they wouldn't allow into the trial and the things that they did. It's just, it's comical, really.
So do you remember, too, that there was a book that was taken from Damien's house?
Yeah.
Like, shortly after he was arrested, or actually he may not even been arrested yet, but his mother gave permission for them to take some things.
Yeah, it was his journal, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So that was used against him. There was a book that he had bought, like, at a bookstore or something, too. I don't know if it was like a used bookstore, maybe the library, I can't remember. But he bought it for like 10 cents. So it was a used book.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like these phrases underlined, and there was like all these notes in the margins. Damien did testify. Now, from Paul Ford, his point of view, he didn't want Jason to testify because he felt like that his testimony, like, it hurt him.
Yeah, usually I don't think people testify.
Yeah, they say it's not a good idea.
Right.
But really, I mean, I totally get why Damien's lawyers wanted him to testify, because he could explain things. Because
he was very intelligent. Very
intelligent. And, like, there was things that were said that Damien could tell the truth.
Yeah.
Like about the book, the passage that was underlined. He explained that he bought the book, that it must have been used for a book report, because there was also notes in the margin when he got it that he didn't underline that. There was lyrics and poems that were written in his journal that it wasn't satanic writings and things like that.
No, one was Shakespeare and
Yeah.
one was like a Metallica song or something.
Was one
right?
of them like Walt Whitman or something? It was
Something like that.
Or Edgar Allan Poe. It was like famous
Yeah.
poets.
Yeah.
And yeah, one was like a Metallica song. And then one of the things that was used against him too was that there was this Damien was a person that you said he was intelligent.
Mhm.
He studied about a lot of things. Even in prison, he continued to study. But this whole thing, I think that the police, the lawyers, they were pissed off because he was smarter than them.
He was very smart.
Mm-hmm. He studied, he went to was it Catholic school, or not school, but he was in a Catholic church for a while.
Yeah.
His name, Damien. So Damien was born as Michael, and then Damien had heard the story about Saint Damien, who was a doctor who took care of people with leprosy. And the doctor he got it himself, and he ended up dying from leprosy. Damien liked the story, so he adapted that name. Because isn't like in the Catholic religion, you adopt a new name or something?
I think I don't know, but I think that he changed it altogether because he was taking his stepdad's name anyway, his last name.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to change his first name too.
Yeah, so he just went ahead.
And that was his, I don't know, someone important to be named after to him.
Right. Because I think I remember reading in his book too that something about that was important to him to choose his own name or something.
Yeah. And it sounds good together, so
it does. It does. Yeah, because that's right. Because his last name was Hutchison.
I don't remember.
I think it was Michael Hutchison, which his father was still around, but I don't remember what the whole story was with that.
I don't know either.
But nonetheless, like Damien was able to explain these things and to make people see his side. And whether or not it was good for the trial, I guess it wasn't, but for me it was. Was it for you? Like, it could explain, the silly rumors about, there was report that Damien had a jar and that the testicles were from Stevie Branch were in his room.
And the parents believed this. This was a thing.
Because this is what the police are telling them.
Yes.
And then, and I was going to mention, so this alphabet. So with the different studies and stuff, Damien had found this book or something that was about all these different types of alphabets. And Damien, while he was in prison or in jail, he was practicing, trying to remember from memory these different alphabets. And on this list, there was Aleister Crowley,
mm-hmm.
which is a well-known devil. What is he, like a priest in the devil's church or something?
Something like that, yeah.
So he was trying to throw that in Damien's face, like, oh, you're not into devil worshiping, but you chose this name along with your name, your best friend's name, which was Jason, and your son's name, who was recently born, and I think it was his girlfriend's name. It was just another ploy to try to make him look bad.
It was. Didn't they even ask him, would you have read that book? Or have you read that book? And he said no, but I would if I could. He was honest about it. Yeah. He liked to study all religions. That was his thing. Yes. But he was really into the whole Catholic religion for a while. I think he wanted to be a priest or something at one point, right?
Yeah, I think he was planning to go to school. Yeah. But he had he was in and out of not like an institution, but something like that, I guess, because he had a lot of mental issues that there's a lot of people that deal with today. So remember, this was in 93, so it wasn't
talked about.
Right. That's why people called him a freak and all this stuff. And they said that he would walk around with a cane or a staff and a black trench coat. But he also explained that he would do these things to keep people at bay. He was a very shy person, and people would make fun of him because he was different. People would say, like, I think he said that he had like a skull that he took to school, and people would be like, oh, did you? I don't know. They would just ask him stupid questions, and so he would say yes to get them to leave him alone or to make them feel scared of him. So these absurd things like about the jar, that's where these things came from. And there's a investigator that comes into play. So in a little bit, I'll kind of go into more of those things, like, I guess so we can kind of see or make sense of why the rumors were believed.
It's because he was a devil worshiper. Duh.
I mean,
remember we were talking earlier.
You solved it already.
Like, oh, so one of them had like 15 black T-shirts, and they were like band shirts. So obviously, they love the devil.
And the whole, like, I know I'm skipping here, but the whole thing about in the closing statements, prosecutor Fogelman is like, is there anything wrong with wearing black in itself? No. Is there anything wrong with listening to heavy metal? No. But when you put all those things together,
then yeah.
Whatever. So yeah, we already talked about Damien's name, the Catholic studies.
Poor Damien. He really got the worst of it all.
He did. So what I was talking about with the investigator. Well, maybe don't let me get off track. Okay, so let's stick with the trial, and then we'll go into the investigator. Okay. So one of the other things that was used against Damien was the fact that when Getchell was questioning him, they would ask him things like, which I think we talked about in the last episode, like, how do you think the killer felt? And Damien's like, happy. And they're like, oh my God, why did you say that? Well, because obviously the killer wanted to do it, so that made him happy.
Yeah.
Michael Carson. I don't remember if we mentioned him in the last episode. But
I don't think we did.
Okay. So this person was in a juvenile detention center with Jason from about August until about like right before the trial. So there was some time, a matter of months, and not once did this Michael Carson say anything. But supposedly, Michael asks Jason they're playing some cards and stuff, and he says, did you do it? And Jason says no. Well, the next day, Michael Carson says, oh, like, come on, tell me, I won't tell anybody. Like, did you do it? And Jason says, yeah, he tells Michael how he dismembered the kids, sucked the blood out of the penis, and placed the genitals in his mouth. So Michael Carson says that he wanted to come forward because he saw the family on TV and he had a soft heart.
Sure.
And supposedly this was a couple months after Jason had told him. The thing is that Jason was a very quiet person. Very quiet. The way that he described Jason did not fit Jason at all. I mean, even like Jason's lawyers, and this is why I was talking about Paul Ford with the guilt by association.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, like this, it just doesn't fit Jason. Like at the time, I think it was like a month or so before the murders had happened, it was said that Jason's mom had tried to commit suicide, and that Jason was writing this, like an essay or something at school, and the writings dictated or depicted a person who was positive about life, not someone that would want to commit this kind of murder,
right,
or be in a cult. So it just didn't add up. It just didn't make any sense. And so that's why, like, they kind of went with the route, like, where Jason was guilty by association.
He was definitely guilty by association.
Of being a good person?
Yep.
Or being a cool person?
Yep.
Well, they found out later that Carson was a liar.
Wow, I'm really shocked. Hold
Are
on,
you
let me
shocked?
pretend.
Danny Williams, a juvenile drug and alcohol counselor, had treated Carson while he was in this facility. And so the only reason why that Carson knew about Jason, the things that Jason had supposedly done, was because this juvenile drug counselor told Carson. So Carson, he calls up the prosecution office and he's like, this boy's a liar. And, he said, I feel bad to tell you, but he only knows these things because I told him in a counseling session. And do you think the prosecutors took that into consideration?
What is this person doing saying these things?
Okay, so
isn't this supposed to be confidential?
Oh, the counselor?
Yeah. Wait, does she tell him about the other kid?
So Danny Williams tells Carson about Jason. What I'm guessing is that maybe in this counseling session, maybe he's trying to use Jason as an example to Carson. That's the only thing I could come up with. That's the only reason why I could think that he would tell him about this other kid. But again, rumors. Maybe Carson asked the counselor about Jason and they got into a conversation about Jason.
It just seems unprofessional and
discussing another case.
And everything about this stinks.
Mm-hmm. But the prosecution, they ignored it. They knew. And in fact, Fogelman or Davis, one of the two, they tell the family of the victims, we have a witness, but the defense is going to try to make him not look credible. The other thing that was used in the trial was this serrated knife. It was this huge knife. I don't know, I guess you could use it for hunting, skinning the animal after you killed it. It was pretty big knife. So Dr. Peretti, remember he's the medical examiner?
Okay, yeah.
He was the one that, which I might mention this, but he is going through pictures and he is telling details to the jury about how the penis was skinned and, just going point by point. So he says that this knife was dragged across the skin. So imagine you're holding your hand out. Imagine which for the guys aren't going to know, but how you hold your hand out and you do a little test of makeup or paint, if you're a painter, how you do a little test on your, the top of your wrist or your fist. He's holding his hand like that and he takes the sharp part of the knife and he's dragging it across the skin. This is how this made that mark. Because it's the markings on the skin are abrasions.
Yeah.
And then remember at the end in the closing statements, Prosecutor Fogelman, he takes an orange or something and he's showing how the knife is making these markings that match in the evidence, the photo of one of the children.
But it's actually nothing.
No.
It's nothing like it. Not even close.
No. And he's all just smacking the orange with the knife.
Did this medical examiner also get his degree on online school without taking classes? I'm just kidding.
It's funny that you say that though, because there are some issues that we will discuss shortly.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. He must have did that too.
No, a little bit different, but it's just
somebody took the test for him.
He tried to take the test 5 times.
Oh my God. I'm sorry I made you spit it out.
Nope. See how not even bizarre, but see how silly and
it's ridiculous.
Just silly this case is. So the thing with the knife even gets worse. So Gitchell knew that this knife, he knew where this knife was. This knife that was brought into evidence was found in a lake, which was behind Jason's house. Gail, Jason's mom, tells Gitchell, I don't know how it came about, but I don't know if it was like after Jason was arrested that he interviewed Gail, but somehow or another, Gail tells Gitchell, I threw a knife in the lake behind our house about a year ago. This was a year ago before the murders. So Gitchell, through all this investigation and everything, he like gets these divers. He says, there's this knife. It will be in this location. So
yeah, he had a hunch, right?
Yeah. What was it? It was a
it was a
source. I think it was said that there was a source that report or a tip came in. After about an hour and a half, the divers miraculously found this knife. But this was the murder weapon. But Detective Mike Allen, they straight out asked him. And remember, Mike Allen is the one that picked up Jesse and was a part of this too. He, like I forget if it was defense or prosecution. It had to have been defense. He said, the defense asked Mike Allen, so are you telling me that this knife is the murder weapon? And he says no. So why is it even entered into evidence then? Why?
Because they're going to make it work.
Like you said, they have an agenda.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. But what I loved too about the defense was like they came back at Dr. Peretti or whatever, and they were like, so with your expertise and with your skills of using a knife, if that knife was used to skin and castrate Christopher Byers, how could it have been done? It was in the dark. It was in the water. Where's all the blood?
Yeah, because the scene was spotless. Remember that. No blood. None.
It could have been saturated into the earth.
It could have been washed away. No drops left behind.
And I mean, there was talk about like, or I guess some agreements of like, that it could have been a separate location, you think. Like, the murder scene was somewhere else and then the boys were brought there.
The murder scene was definitely somewhere else.
The highlight or the common thing in this case is common sense.
Yeah. Not a lot of them had it.
So, do you remember Marty King, the restaurant manager of Bojangles?
I remember Bojangles.
Your
and I found out
name?
that Bojangles is still a thing. I had no idea.
Oh, which speaking, I did find out too that the truck stop in, I believe, the wash, they're not there anymore.
Oh.
And then that whole area, like where the dead end of the street, all the woods have been like chopped down.
Well, I just want to say that thanks to this case, going to a Bojangles one day is a goal. And when I do, I'll take a picture to prove I was there.
It's not funny, but like in the documentary, one of them, there's a person sitting there. They have a Bojangles cup.
Bojangles.
So Marty King is testifying about the fact that there's this man found in the bathroom. He's all bloody. There's mud all over him.
Oh yeah, the cop only went to the drive-through.
And that officer, she testifies to that. Okay, come on, give her credit. The two had no relations. They were in different areas of the town.
Of course. And why go inside when a bloody man's in there?
I loved it because this restaurant, the manager, Marty, he was like, I go to the front door expecting her to come in, but she just drives around the building and comes to the drive-thru. He sounded a little annoyed with that too.
And he's shocked.
Can we just call her dumbass? I don't care, you dumbass. You got to understand, it was in a different ward. So Detective Ridge, the next day, Detective Ridge and I can't remember who the other person was, but two detectives, they come back to the restaurant and they take blood scrapings off of the wall in the restroom. And there was also a pair of sunglasses that was on the back of the commode. I love how in that area they call a toilet commode. Which it's said around here too, but
yeah, I was going to say, I've had family members say that. Mm-hmm. It's good old country folk.
Yeah. those blood scrapings, they were brought up in trial, and, they asked Detective Ridge, what were the findings? He don't know because he lost them. His fault. He lost them.
Wow. That's,
Great detective work.
yeah. It was never sent off and it was lost.
Yeah, he lost it. I'm wondering if he, put it in his lunch bag or something. Or maybe he just left it on the roof of his car and drove off. Remember how people would leave things on the roof of their car and just drive off?
I've done that before.
Yeah.
I think with my Olive Garden leftovers before. Seriously.
I wish I could have seen that.
I was sad. This case makes me want to bang my head against the wall.
Yeah. It makes me want to never go to Memphis.
Right.
Or Arkansas, wherever the hell it is. Arkansas.
Arkansas.
On March of the 17th, closing statements began. The prosecution used the knife and the orange shit show, as we discussed already. Sherry, I'm sorry for cussing a lot.
No, she's not.
It's just so frustrating. And then, again, this is where John Fogelman used the statement about wearing black and listening to heavy metal. That's where he made that point.
Wait. I could see where you put Damien has no soul either.
Yes.
Did he sell it?
This person says, I'm paraphrasing here, but he says something about, and if you look at Damien, you will see he has no soul.
Duh, apparently.
I mean, to do something like this, there's no way you can. The defense, they talked about the lack of blood at the crime scene and satanic panic. And this is, where Paul Ford had mentioned the guilt by association, that there's nothing that links Jason to this crime, that there's no evidence.
None.
The next day, on March 18th, the guilty verdict came back, and that's when Damien was sentenced to, or actually never mind. See, the verdict came in, and then the next day, that's when the sentencing happened. So Damien was given death by lethal injection. Jason was given life without parole. Jason was 16, Jesse 18, Damien 19. And then in 1996, so this was in 1994, okay, when they were sentenced.
Yes.
And in the process of all of this, from the time that the kids were announced to be missing to the trial, these documentaries are covering all of that. So in 1996, the documentary airs. And the world, the nation, oh my gosh. Thank God that these people made the documentary.
Yeah, I mean, without
Really?
this,
they would have executed Damien. He said himself, he said, I would just be a memory, and the other two would still be in prison.
Yep.
In 1999, the final appeal at state level for a new trial was put in front of Judge Burnett, and it was denied.
Yeah, didn't they have several appeals,
Yeah.
but it was always the same judge.
Mm-hmm.
He was always denying it, and he was backed up by what's the next Supreme Court?
Which they say that's not out of the ordinary for the trial judge to be a part of the appeals or to make those decisions, because the idea is for that the judge has all the knowledge of the trial. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, for another judge to come in and be kind of new to the trial.
But it's an elected position,
hand,
right?
Yeah.
And in the documentary, I remember Damien had no faith in this appeal happening because he said it was the same judge.
Yeah. It was like he already knew the answer, so why bother?
Right. He wasn't wrong.
Bother? And really, this is when the work really starts to get these guys out. all these things start happening. And all these celebrities start coming together for funds to get these guys out of prison. And because they see themselves, even just ordinary people that are just at home watching HBO said the same thing. Oh my God, this could be me.
Yeah. Didn't Johnny Depp say that?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. If this documentary touched everybody and it was on everyone's minds because they saw it for what it was.
Definitely. So we're going to talk about Ron Lax. He's a private investigator because he did a lot of work on this case. And if you watch the movie Devil's Knot, and of course if you read Mara Levitt's book, he's mentioned in there. But like, I don't remember hearing about him in the documentaries. He was an important role in this. He is described as very meticulous, very organized, and he was anal retentive. So he knew what he was doing. He would help on cases where clients faced charges of capital murder, and he agreed, though he considered the death penalty an appropriate punishment for persons found guilty of some kinds of murder, but he would still like do investigative work to help some defendants get acquitted. So he was like, legit. If you're guilty for it, you deserve it, okay. But if you're not, then let me help you. He wanted the truth, and that's what he did. So he catches Damien's, Jason's, Jesse's case, okay? So he tells his assistant, Glory Shettles, to drive across the river and to inform the court-appointed defense lawyers that he wanted to help. I think he did this, like, free, too. I think. He sent Gloria to, like, interview with Damien. And remember how we were talking earlier about how Damien would, like, say things to get, like, a rise out of people or to use it as a comfort thing, like to keep people away from him or whatever. So Gloria was the person that she would be like, Damien, don't address people, because people outside of the court, they would say things like, you're a baby killer, rot in hell, like all these terrible things. And Damien would like respond to them. They would taunt him. And then Gloria would be like, you can't do that, because like a picture was taken of Damien making this face. And he was like, well, I made the face because this person said this. So Gloria had to make him understand, like, you can't do that. This could affect your case. It can make people, I get it that you said all these things like to scare people, but it can hurt you as well. And then also, she was helpful in, Damien was on different kinds of medication, and he actually tried to he did commit suicide, while he was in prison. And it was known that he like was suffering major depression and like paranoia inside the jail. So she would help with that too. Like just kind of like talk to him, like in his book there's a lot of mean things that were done to him, and she was just a part of helping make that better. Ron Lax would also go and he did his own investigation work. He would go and talk to like, these girls that said that they overheard Damien say that he killed these boys and things like that. Because his thing was, like I said, he wanted to know if it was true. He wanted to know the facts. So I just kind of wanted to mention him.
Yeah.
Because I think he was really important to the case. So we're going to kind of go into what we know now. Like the investigative work of what we know now to be true. You remember, of course, we just talked about it, about the castration of Christopher.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They found out later that it was not like a sex crime. It wasn't castration. It was more than likely from animals.
Yeah.
So the way they got to this was, so Damien's in prison. He meets Lori Davis. Lori Davis becomes his wife. She becomes a part of helping Damien. And it's always kind of referred to as Damien as like he's the center, but I don't think it's intended to be that way. Because it's almost like...
Well, he's the main target, though.
Right. So Jesse and Jason were kind of like along the ride with that.
Yeah.
So I don't want people to think that we're just like, it's all about Damien, because it's not, but it is.
Yeah.
It's like, if we can get Damien out and we can figure out what really happened, then of course the other two guys are going to get out too. I think is how
Damien's life is on the line at this point.
Yes. And just because he's weird. Lori, she's an architect in New York, and she decides to move to Arkansas so she can focus on the case. And through help of all these celebrities that we, had mentioned, like Johnny Depp, there was Natalie Maines from the Dixie Chicks, Henry Rollins, who else was it? Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam, and Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh, his wife or girlfriend. They were, Peter Jackson was the person who did The Ring, or Lord of the Rings.
Okay, yeah.
All these people, they come together. And then plus people, there was an organization started called West Memphis 3, like WM3.org. They all came together, raising all these funds. They got these experts that knew what they were talking about, like a FBI profiler, and they more or less solved the case themselves.
Yeah, it was a huge group. They did make a difference.
Yes. So they found new evidence. There was this DNA that was never tested, and they got a hit on it. Not like a hit, like it wasn't in the criminal database or whatever, but they got a match. Now, with this new evidence, this allowed for a hearing for a new trial. Do you kind of want to talk about that a little bit? Do you have some things on that?
Maybe once you start it. Or you mean like the
new evidence?
There was, are you talking about the hair?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a hair that was found in like one of the knots that was used to tie up the boys, like in the shoestrings.
Yeah.
And the hair was actually matched to Terry Hobbs, which was
Stevie's stepfather.
Yes. So Terry Hobbs, I just want to say real quick, he doesn't stand out at all in the first documentary.
At all.
He doesn't even say anything. It's not until this point where you get to know who he is. So the hair matches Terry, but it doesn't match any of the West Memphis 3 boys.
Yeah, they ruled out that this DNA does not match them.
And then I have notes here. It says another hair found at the crime scene is consistent with hair from David. Oh, how do you say his last name? Jacoby, a friend of Terry Hobbs. And Hobbs spent time with Jacob on the day of the murders and could have easily picked up one of his hairs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and we forgot to mention the fibers. That was a big thing in the trial. The fibers. Through all this, they ruled out that the fibers, remember, I think we talked about it in the last episode, that there was fibers found on one of the boys that supposedly matched to Damien. Mm-hmm. A fiber found in Damien's house. And then there was another fiber that was found on one of the boys that matched in Jason's house. Now, they found out that those fibers, which John Fogelman, the prosecutor, said was more important than hair.
Yeah.
They found out that those fibers were fibers that were so common, you could find them at Walmart. So they really had no significance at all.
No. So this hair was kind of a big deal.
A very big deal.
So nothing is connected, Damien, Jesse, or Jason, to this crime whatsoever, but it is connecting Terry Hobbs and his friend
David Jacoby. Yeah.
Yeah. But still, this isn't being investigated right now.
It's just kind of like, at the time, it was halted. Like,
yeah.
There's still denial of appeals and all this stuff. And So how do we get to the point though of what we're talking about now? Because this is so difficult for us to get through. So the Free the West Memphis support group, it starts after this documentary. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the girls, or one of the women, her name's Kathy. She sees these classes that are being offered about like criminal profilers, and there's this guy that's a criminal profiler that's actually given the class himself. His name is Brent Turvey. And she emails or whatever. She contacts Brent Turvey and she's like, there's this case, tells him about the case. And he's like, stop, tell the lawyers to contact me. So she does. And the lawyers and Brent Turvey, they get in connection. So after looking at all these crime scenes, Brent Turvey, he says this is no ritual. It's not satanic. It's not a serial killer. It's someone who knows the area, someone who knows the victims. The knife, there was no further analysis due to testing because the evidence was destroyed. Now there was another knife that came into play. This was like a folding pocket knife that was given to the HBO producers from John Mark Byers, which was the father of Christopher Byers.
He was a stepfather too, wasn't he?
He adopted Christopher when he was like, I don't know, 2 or 4 or something like that.
And let me tell you, this dude is a character.
And we described him somewhat, I believe, last episode. Like, he's very eccentric, and there was talk of that he was a suspect. Now, him and his wife, Melissa, they did get into some trouble with the law. At one point, he was working as an informant for West Memphis PD. He was caught. He went to prison at one point, like while Damien and Jason and Jesse are all in prison. He served some time for selling pills or something to a undercover narcotics officer. I think it was prescription pills. So he did some time in there. I think it was like in 2000. Him and his wife had gotten in trouble for stealing like
their neighbors' stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Like $20,000 worth of stuff.
And then also like there was a
bad check.
In that what do you call that? Like a protection order put against them because
a restraining order?
Yes. Put against them because Mark spanked their neighbor's child.
Yeah.
And it left a bruise.
Mm-hmm.
And John Mark Byers was like, oh, I took a fly swat and swatted him on the end of the behind. And that was it. So there was some trouble going on. And it turns out that John Mark Byers was kind of being done the same way that Damien was being done.
Yeah, but he totally brought this onto himself because let me tell you.
He was loud.
There was, are you going to talk about the bite marks?
Oh, go for it.
Okay, so another thing of evidence was there was a bite mark on one of the kids, right? Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that that dude and the Terry Hobbs guy both have dentures after the fact, after the murder. So their bite mark evidence is gone. But during the documentary, you hear he's sitting with 2 friends and they're talking smack and whatever about the case. And he's like, I lost my teeth in a fight over this. And he takes his dentures out and he's holding it, talking about
that's so gross.
He lost his teeth in a fight. And then the next time you see him, no, he lost his teeth because of whatever disease and they rotted out. And
like
then
the periodontal disease.
Yeah. And then the next time it was a different story. So he always said something different that doesn't look good on you, dude.
Medication rotted the teeth out.
Yes. I mean, he was saying different things to different people. And even this guy on the documentary said, dude, when the camera is off, like, you're like my buddy. And as soon as the camera is on, you're just in attack mode.
Uh-huh.
It was like he's acting. But then the whole situation with his wife didn't help either.
Yeah, his wife was she died. And then, I know this was a point that you wanted to make about.
No, go ahead.
When he says she was murdered.
Yeah.
So they end up giving Mark Byers we're just going to say Mark Byers because it's easier. And I think that's mostly how they referred to him as Mark.
Yeah.
But they do this polygraph test. And in the polygraph test, which he passes, but in the test, it's weird that he says that she was murdered.
Yeah, because right before that, he's like, I don't know how she died because her death was marked undetermined. And then a minute later, he turns around and he says something about his wife being murdered.
It's kind of like when they say, like, if a police officer is interviewing someone and they say how you use the word, like past tense.
Yes.
Like, oh, he was.
Yeah. And he had a girlfriend during this time. Did you hear that?
No. He had a girlfriend?
This is what I heard from another podcast. He had a girlfriend during this time, and when she died and they came, the police or whoever came, his girlfriend was there, and he made a comment like, man, I hope they don't think that I murdered her. I smothered her because I didn't. But why would you say, I hope they don't think I smothered her?
That's weird.
Do you see what I mean? So he doesn't help himself when he talks.
Well, and like he has a brain tumor, and like they talked about how during the first trial he would like nod off, like Jesse's trial, and how they think that he was on some form of narcotic.
Yeah, I think, he was definitely on drugs or something.
Well,
but you're watching this and you're like, is this dude crazy? Is this dude on drugs? Is this guy guilty? Is this guy... I mean, you just don't know how to feel about him.
And the knife, the pocket knife that he gives to the producers, they turn it over to the police because there was blood found on it. Yeah. And they concluded that it matched it matched him. But again, it was like, well, I don't know how the blood got there. And then it was, well, I did cut my I cut my thumb that day. So just very conflicting
stories.
Yes. And even Damien had said, I think in one of the interviews, more than one person was looking at Mark Byers. And then Damien later on said he wrote a letter to Mark Byers and he said, I basically did to you what was being done to me and I'm sorry.
Yeah. And by the time you get to part 3 in the documentary, he's a different person.
And it does make you wonder, like, was it because of his brain tumor?
Was it the drugs?
Yes.
Was it both?
And grief. And he even says there was a lot that I had to work out. I mean, grief can do some things to you.
Well, yeah. And then you got to think he really thought that Damien had the child's penis in a jar found in his apartment. Like, that's what he believed to be true because that's what he was told.
And if you're loyal to, these police officers because you worked with them as an informant or, just being a friend or whatever, because they said that Mark Byers was well known within the department. So why wouldn't you believe them?
Right. He was just in the wrong headspace for sure. But you'll know what we're talking about if you choose to watch the documentary.
Yes.
But by time part 3 comes around, he's a total different person.
But he, they did use their resources to look into him. And that was kind of more or less ruled out. These profilers, though, that came in. Oh, so I wanted to go back to, the profiler, Brent Turvey. So he was saying that this was the worst. At this point, we still think that Christopher Byers was castrated. He said that this was the worst case of sexual mutilation that he had ever seen, and that there's markings on the body where you can tell that he was stabbed and that Christopher was moving as he was being stabbed. So like a stabbing motion, like a jabbing, like a quick jabbing, like it shows rage, and the kid's moving, trying to get away. Now, Dr. Perfetti or Peretti or whatever, he did mention that too, that the child was moving while he was being stabbed. So, I mean, there's those two similarities.
Oh, and let's not forget the bite mark was not identified as a bite mark because they said it was like an impression of a belt buckle.
Mm-hmm. But this profiler, Turvey, he's like, that's a bite mark.
Yeah.
And that's when he said, if you get impressions, that's your killer.
Is he the one that also said that crime scene was a dumping scene, not the actual crime scene?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
He was. He was like...
He knew his stuff.
He was like a light in the case. Like, yeah. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
He said, like, the key to the case to solve it was that bite mark.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah. That'd get you every time. Just like it did with that, remember that one girl cop that bit the girl she was jealous of at the end of the day? What got her? That bite mark. Ted Bundy. What got him?
Oh, you're going to love this because
that bite mark.
The person that was involved with the Ted Bundy bite mark.
Was that him?
He was involved in this case.
Nice.
Yes. So he knows. He's another smart person that knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Money was an issue with this case too, though, because there wasn't the sufficient amount of money that they needed to do things.
I mean, yeah.
And one of the things too, going back to buyers, Turvey really wanted to look into buyers too, and Mark Byers, because he had gotten a report on Christopher, and Christopher was a troubled kid. He was exhibiting behavioral of abuse. He was setting fires. He was playing in his feces. He was a bully. He was seeing a neurologist, and this neurologist, he was prescribed Ritalin, and the neurologist was just floored. There was no change in Christopher's behavior because they suspect that the Ritalin was not being given to him.
Huh.
Maybe it was being
used as a drug for the adult.
Yes. Which was a very, very common thing then at that time, too.
It was.
They did rule out, too, that Jason, Damien, and Jason's teeth. Jason, Jesse, and Damien, none of their impressions matched the bite marks on the kids.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Yeah.
They did take that.
Also, that hair, we can't get away from that hair. Because, remember how they said, the castration of the kid, how I said that it was an animal?
Yeah.
With, all these billions of pieces of hair that was taken from the crime scene. And I'm going to go through the list again of, what was turned in as evidence. Some of that was animal hair. It wasn't human hair. It was animal hair.
Mm-hmm.
So they had these hearings, and there was 2 state medical examiners and an odontologist, which was the person the Ted Bundy person.
Oh, okay.
That was the odontologist. So they had this hearing, and they had this news conference. Well, it was kind of a news conference, but it was people were relaying their findings, their reports and things. Okay. John Douglas, he is the behavioral analyst, okay, from the FBI. He is the person who was there at the beginning. He started the FBI behavioral science unit. Who could you have better on the case? He profiled pretty much what Turvey had already said. But once he knew about the animal thing, that Christopher was not castrated by knife, that it was actually an animal, he said that this was not a lust murder. That this was something that, focus on the family. The focus starts on the families. What was it? They said that this was, a crime of opportunity, I think.
Yeah, and he completely ruled out Satanism or the occult. And my notes say that he's perhaps the best in his field, too.
And then there was a medical examiner, Michael Baden. He has his own like program. You've never seen his programs?
I don't think so.
It's kind of like where he will present. Okay, have you heard of Dr. G, medical examiner?
No.
Dr. G was the medical examiner for part of the Casey Anthony trial.
Oh.
So I don't mean to compare them, but imagine a male version of Dr. G.
Okay.
He knows his shit too. So he gave an analysis. There was a forensic pathologist, Vincent DeMayo,
Okay.
out of Texas. And his autopsy, he said that like the autopsies were done in exquisite detail, like the autopsies by Peretti. But what he thought was like weird was that the interpretation of the findings were completely wrong. So like, for example, nothing due to using a knife, like we were talking about, like dragging the knife across the skin. He's like, no, like those wounds were after death. And those wounds were from animals. So imagine you've got this big turtle, this huge turtle, which in fact, Turtle Hill, there was an area around where they were murdered that was called Turtle Hill. So there's these big ass turtles, and imagine them scraping the skin like an abrasion.
Yeah.
That's what that was. It wasn't a knife dragging
No.
the skin, as Peretti had said.
Right.
And then they also demonstrated with these big, huge turtles. They said that they go for the loose skin and the soft skin first.
Which
the
is
penis.
why, yep.
And then they move to the ears, the nose, the eyes. And if you look at the pictures, the crime scene photos, you will see they showed it.
Yeah.
The lips, there's bites on the lips, because remember too how it was said that the kids were pulled up, one of the kids or all of them were pulled up by their ears.
Mm-hmm.
It was because this animal was eating at their ears. That's what that was. All of this just makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
When you see it this way.
It's a shame it's taken this long to get the correct information.
To the point, yeah. And through all of this too, like I said, Jesse stuck with the same lawyer all the way throughout. Damien had went through a couple different lawyers, but the thing was that at the appeal to try to get a new trial, the lawyer, his point was that, or the case that they were trying to use was that he didn't get the proper counsel. Okay, so Stephen Braga, he was Damien's lawyer, like for part of the appeals, like after Val Price and I can't remember the other person's name, but the initial trial lawyers, they really did what they could, but they just didn't have the funds. So one of the lawyers that represented Damien,
mm-hmm.
he had also represented that Michael Carson, the one that said that Jason told him, like confessed to him. So his thing was like conflict of interest. So not only like the lack of funds, but like the conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So, he was...
What a mess.
I know. It just continues to be a mess.
Meanwhile, the real killer or killers are walking free.
Yes, and that was like their whole point too, is like, on one hand, it's like we have to prove our innocence, but we can do that by finding the killer.
Mm-hmm.
They still care about finding the killer. It's not just about them and their innocence.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I wanted to mention too, before I forget, is that there was a friend that Jason and Damien were on the phone with.
Sorry, my glasses hit the mic.
We always do that. Her name was Jennifer. She never got the chance to provide an alibi for them. Like, she was literally on the phone with them the whole night, on and off. There was also a neighbor that saw the boys at like 6:30 the night that they went missing around Terry Hobbs. he says that he never saw the boys. She was never revisited again either.
Yeah, they never went to the neighbors or anything during the investigation. I remember this.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're saying that. And she never came forward because she thought that he would say
that he saw
them because he's one of the...
Yeah, and mind you, she's a kid at the time.
Yeah.
And then the thing is, too, is like, we were talking about the profilers. They said that it was somebody that knew the kids.
Right.
Someone that knew the area. So
it's
there you
always,
go.
Well, not always, but
they say you look at the boyfriend or the parents first.
It's usually someone you know.
Right.
Usually.
And so Michael Carson, to come back to him too, he was a drug addict. So he recants later, much later. He says, I want to tell Jason I'm sorry. It wasn't true. He was facing time for burglary. So evidently he was approached that he could like lessen his sentence. He was on like acid, LSD, and he said that like when you're on that stuff, you're in this dream world. He was like, I didn't know what I was saying. So there's that. And then the fact that Damien's trial lawyer represented Michael Carson at one point. So there's a conflict of interest. So that was a part of Damien's post-conviction lawyer trying to get a new trial.
Yeah.
I mean, really, like, it wasn't until, like, all these experts came together that they finally, someone would listen. And the Supreme Court, did you watch that yet about the Supreme Court, like, where the judges are, like, asking questions and stuff?
I think I did, yeah.
The lawyer, the attorney general, or the assistant, whatever he is that they have representing the attorney general's office,
mm-hmm.
He is like, it's mumbo jumbo. Like, nothing he is saying is, like, making sense. It's not, like, direct. Like, Damien's lawyer is, like, fact, clarify. And this dude is just like,
I remember watching something and I don't know who it was. They were like, well, this would imply that we need to look at every case this every 17 years to see if they were actually innocent or not.
Yes, because also at the time, there was a law that was just passed that allowed people who were convicted, like if there was new evidence brought up,
they could have a new trial or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's that dude. And the judge is like, so what's wrong with that? What's wrong with them presenting this new evidence? Like, I don't get what you're saying. So they did end up getting not a new trial, but it worked out for the better for them. They ended up entering an Alford plea. It's a bit, just like the rest of the case, it's a bit confusing and like, huh?
I don't know if it worked out better for them or not.
I mean, like Damien's lawyer said, it's
not ideal.
Right. But they did pave the way for other people as well. To help other people who are in prison that shouldn't be. They kind of set a history there. A history marker.
Well, explain what
the Alford plea. So the Alford plea is a unique plea where you claim your innocence, but you're guilty at the same time, right? Is that how do you?
I would say you don't get to claim your innocence. You have to say you're guilty, and then your time is considered spent, and you're done, and you're released.
And you can't sue.
And you can't, it's more of a liability thing, I think, so they can't get sued. So when they went to this plea, like Damien was like, I'm innocent of all these charges. I have to say that I'm guilty in order to be considered time spent or whatever.
Right.
Jason didn't want to do it at all because he didn't like the fact of saying he was guilty for something he wasn't guilty of. But since Damien's life was on the line this whole time, he went ahead and did it. I just think that mainly it's just a liability thing.
And I agree with what you're saying. Because why would you, the lawyer, the prosecutor, or attorney general's office or whatever, it was almost like he wanted to say, if this goes to trial, we'll lose. And he said, he hadn't had a chance to look at all the evidence. But he stopped himself. Like, I really think he was going to say, like, they'll win. Like, if they get a new trial, they'll win. But
yeah, they'll be acquitted.
Yes, that's more perfectly said. Yes. Because, I mean, what evidence did they really have? Nothing. The evidence that they do have of the hair points to someone else.
But as before, they were convicted on nothing before.
Yes.
So you're almost backed into this corner, like, do I take the chance and still stay in prison, or do I just say I'm guilty and fight from the outside?
And it was a great success when Judge Burnett, like, went to Supreme Court or something, like, he got elected into, like, a higher level of what he already was. So they were happy because they were
New judge.
Yes.
I bet.
And then John Fogelman, he went on to be elected a judge, and then Supreme Court or something, but he lost.
I don't think they were thinking they were in the wrong either.
They didn't, but like Fogelman says, which Gary Gitchell, he did say that he kind of regretted saying the 11 thing. The case is strong.
Yeah. He meant to say 13.
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
He meant to say 20. But they still believe that these boys did it. And that's that the case has rested.
Yeah, like they only had one more opportunity to fight it at a federal level.
Right.
Everything else was
all or nothing.
Yeah, it was all or nothing.
Oh, shoot. Do you have the date that they actually got out?
I don't.
I don't either.
I don't. I just remember in the documentary in part 3, you're seeing them in prison in like 2001, and they're like so much older.
Even like, I think it was like...
Was it 2002 maybe?
It might have been 2011 even.
Or 2011?
I'm looking it up to see when they got out.
I don't know, but Jesse was like an older man and bald and
built. Like he took full advantage of those weights.
Jason was still tiny.
But he studied in prison too, so he could somewhat like try to do maybe like activism work with like law related things. He got like a little job in prison, like clerical kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Damien studied, he became a Buddhist, like studied Buddhism or whatever. Is it Buddhism? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Jesse, he just took one day at a time.
I love when they showed Jesse get in the car with his dad when he got out.
I love that too.
So much.
What was it? Jesse said that he wanted to have a big party when he got out. Damien said he wanted to just kind of like disappear with Lori. And then Jason, I think that's when he said he wanted to do something like law related.
Yeah.
He wanted to, I think he wanted to do like humanitarian kind of work.
Did they ever say, because, I mean, when Damien...
August 19th, 2011.
Oh, okay. Did they ever say what happened with Damien and his baby mama? because I just remember in that third part, he's like, my son is now the age that I was
Yeah.
when I was convicted.
Yes.
But
that was freaky.
Yeah.
From what I remember in the book, because like I said, his book I read like years ago.
Yeah.
They just kind of drifted apart while he was in prison. I don't remember if it was a kind of thing like, because remember, they were engaged. I don't think they ever got married, but this reminds me of something else too. But yeah, I think they just drifted apart and she just kind of went on to live her own life. Because he kind of makes a comment about how Lori came into his life and like stayed with him like more than some blood related family did even.
Yeah.
Damien's post-conviction lawyer also tried to get because Damien, before he had went into to prison or before the arrest, he had been approved for SSI for like a disability check because of his mental depression and things like that. So he was getting a monthly check. He was declared disabled. So the lawyer was trying to use that, like that Damien wasn't mentally sound to stand trial.
Okay.
But, all that, it was denied.
Mm.
I mean, the lawyer had some good points to try to do what he could.
Absolutely.
I just feel like Lori really was the saving grace. Because if it wasn't for her, and like, it was so stupid, like Towie Hobbs. He was criticizing Lori's, like saying, which I guess probably a lot of people did. She moved across country and she married a baby killer, and who would do that? Just saying all this crap. But she helped get him out of, and Fran Walsh and Peter Jackson and all those other celebrities. I love it because Harry Rollins was like, weird, check, that's me. Like,
yeah, a lot of people was relating to them.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at it now and you're like, you thought he was weird.
Well, look at what we said. We're like, we would have totally been friends with him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it kind of happened quick. Like this, like the hearings, they would kept like pushing back. But this, it kind of seemed like with the new lawyers and the new evidence, like they kind of sped it up a little bit.
Yeah.
They were like, we don't want this where they plead. We want it, and then they got to wait months. We want it to be where they enter the plea, they walk out that day.
And they did.
That's what happened.
And that's great.
Yes. I love it.
Me too.
So yeah, we kind of left out some names of the lawyers and such.
That's okay.
There's
too many people.
So many people played a factor. The next episode, we're going to go a little bit into Towie Hobbs.
Right. And
in June, just next month, there will be a hearing about the DNA evidence. So Nyoka and I don't know a lot about the Towie Hobbs situation or about what's currently happening. We just know that he was considered to be the next person of interest because of the DNA. So we'll see.
Yeah. We'll get to that.
And then we'll kind of do a recap of life after prison for Jason, Damien, and Jesse.
Yeah.
And then see what we can find out where their current lives are.
Yeah. And we'll try to wrap all that up in part 3. This has been an exciting...
If we feel all the emotions, how did the people that were involved feel all the emotions?
Do you feel the emotions? We hope that you do. I don't know. So is this where we're ending part 2?
This is it, because here we go on 2 hours again.
Yeah. It's a lot. Are you parched again?
I am parched again, and Nyoka's going to have to do quite a bit of editing.
That's okay.
Yeah, so thank you for bearing with us again.
Yes.
If there's any confusion, just ask.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll
And we can definitely address anything that you want to know in the next part.
Yes, and please I stress, please understand that there's so much information, and it's so, like we said last time, so difficult to not get excited and just get ahead of yourselves and to hold back your own opinions.
Definitely got to tread carefully on some of the things.
Didn't want to get sued.
Yeah, they might get $1. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed part 2, and we'll be back next week with part 3. And that is all that we have for you today. So, goodbye.
Thank you much. Bye.